This time of the year, you probably hear a lot of Christmas songs. One you might hear is We Three Kings of Orient Are, which is a song about the magi, or wise men, who visited Jesus after he was born and brought him gifts. What's interesting about the song is that the story it's based on in the Bible doesn't say the wise men are kings. It just says that they are wise men, and it also doesn't say how many there were. The Bible just mentions that the wise men brought 3 gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. It doesn't specify how many wise men there were, or which ones gave which gift, or if all of them each gave all of these gifts. The song probably gets the number 3 because traditionally the wise men are said to be Gaspar, Balthazar, and Melchior, but none of those names are from the biblical story of Jesus. Those 3 names are only known to have appeared in the Christian tradition hundreds of years after the Bible was written in an 8th century journal called the Excerpta Latina Barbari, which was copied from a 6th century Greek scroll. So it's not known for sure if those names are actually the names of the wise men. It's unclear exactly what their occupation was, but most likely they were astrologers from Persia, and they may have even been descendants of Jews who remained in Persia after the Babylonian captivity had ended, or at least have been familiar with Jewish customs after the Babylonian captivity ended. So while I like the song, its title isn't biblically accurate, because the wise men weren't kings, and we don't know how many there were, but I think there was probably at least 3. I mean, if just 1 or 2 guys showed up at Herod's palace talking about a new king being born, I wonder if Herod would have been paranoid enough to be concerned. He might have just thought they were a couple of crazy guys. But if 3 or more showed up, especially if they had an entourage traveling with them, he would probably take what they said seriously. I do have another video that goes into more detail about what the Star of Bethlehem probably was, and why the wise men might have associated it with the birth of a king in Judea. I'll link that in the description. But I also want to mention something else here I think is a misconception for a lot of people regarding the nativity scene. Usually the wise men are depicted as visiting Jesus as a baby in the manger, but that's not what the Bible actually says. The story of Jesus being born and put in a manger is from the book of Luke. The story of the wise men visiting Jesus is in the book of Matthew. In Matthew 2:11, it says the wise men visited the child and his mother Mary in the house. The emphasis here being on the words child and house. It doesn't say they visited a baby in a stable. The story of the wise men visiting takes place sometime after when Jesus was born in a stable. By the time the wise men had arrived, Jesus and his family had apparently moved to a house, and Jesus may have been a year or 2 old by that time. It was the shepherds who visited Jesus in the manger. Interesting that the first people God announced the birth of Christ to were the shepherds. Shepherding at that time would probably have been viewed as a lowly position in society, yet God thought they should be the first to know. The wise men apparently didn't get such an announcement. They probably had to figure it out on their own by watching the sky. So really our nativity scene should probably just show Jesus, Mary, and Joseph with some shepherds and maybe some animals. But if I'm being honest, I'm probably not going to bother to change mine. It might not be the most biblically accurate description, but I still like it the way it looks. Oh, and by the way, there was no little drummer boy mentioned either. Those are my thoughts on that. Thanks for listening.